Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast, where we explore the mindset, skill set, and habit set of leadership communication. Using these tips, techniques, and tactics, you'll be able to talk like a leader to build better relationships and get more done. Your host is Guy Harris, who has more than 20 years of combined professional and military experience in consulting, coaching, and training in areas like team and interaction dynamics, communication strategies and tactics, as well as emotional intelligence. Take it away, Guy.
Hi, this is Guy Harris. Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast. I'm here once again with my friend and colleague, Carl Smith. How you doing, Carl?
Hey, Guy. Good seeing you again, buddy.
It's good to be with you today. I'm excited about our conversation. We're going to talk today about time, perspectives on time, and how they affect our communication as leaders. And what I think we'll do is we're going to build everything around the DISC model. That's kind of the foundational framework we're going to use for our descriptions. I think we'll start with basically a comparison of task versus people perspective, or the DC perspective compared to the IS perspective, DC, CD compared to IS, SI. Looking at task orientation versus people orientation. So Carl and I can take different sides of this conversation because Carl is more people oriented and Guy's more task oriented. We'll see what we can learn about how we can use this understanding to be more effective in our communication as a leader. I mean, more talking like a leader by being aware of different people's time perspectives, time interpretations. And I want to say that before we start, this kind of conversation has the potential to sound like a judging, critical, negative conversation when we start talking about how people are different from each other. It can drift into sounding like one is right or wrong, as opposed to they're just different. And we'll make sure that we're really clear from the start that both Carl and I have the perspective. These are just different ways of thinking about time. These are different default perspectives. And as leaders, we need to understand these defaults so that we can navigate them more successfully rather than sit in judgment of them and be critical of them, that kind of perspective. So let's start, Carl. And you can pick it up with, what are some typical perspectives about how people with more people-oriented perspective on behavior and communication, how do people who come from that side of the DISC model tend to think about, feel about time, and how does that drive their decisions?
Great question. So, I'm going to share this from not only my own experience, but also people that I've had the opportunity to work with, coach many years. And so one of the things that I've recognized, not only in myself, but other people, is the sense of relationship. We tend to want flexibility. We tend to want people to feel comfortable, to have low anxiety. Mm-hmm. I know for me, time is one of these things that I'm constantly got to make sure I'm on time. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to do that. And I also have to work very hard to be on time, or to be even a little bit early. It requires a lot of effort and energy. I also will say that, we have a saying down here in the South is, I'll meet you at 9-ish.
That hurts my ears.
It makes no sense, right?
Like, I don't see ish on the clock anywhere.
Well, and it's this ability to this desire, this ask for flexibility, to be close to, versus very, right at 9 o'clock.
And we're talking about a default perspective, right? We're not talking about in a specific situation, kind of broad strokes. This is how people tend to think about it.
Yes. And literally, that was literally about to come out of my mouth. And it varies from person to person.
Sure.
But this overall desire for some flexibility with time is important to a lot of people.
So would you say that comes from looking at time through a relationship filter?
Yes.
Meaning I don't see time in terms of accomplishment or task completion. I see time through the filter of, what does time mean to my relationship?
Yes. And being sensitive to other people's needs, mm-hmm. being accommodating, being encouraging. Perfect example. I literally was on a coaching call just before Guy and I were talking on this call. And my coaching call ended specifically a minute before Guy and I were going to talk at the top of the hour. Well, I had to set things up and get ready. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm late. And at the same time, I'm like, well, I'm also serving. I'm also helping. And it's about the
So there's that relationship filter and how you see the time
yes
issue.
Yes.
And the flip side of that is, the more task perspective. And like you said, this isn't a perfect statement that is 100% true for all people. It is a commonly true thing, though. The people with a more task perspective tend to think about the relationship impact on time secondarily and think more in terms of accomplishment or efficiency with time primarily.
Yes.
And so it can lead to this view of time represents the things I can get done, as opposed to time represents how it affects my relationship.
Yes.
And now that can sound like aren't they basically the same thing? Like, well, no, they're fundamentally different. So it's often true that people with task perspective will get irritated with other people's view of time, a people or person's perspective on time, because they feel disrespected. And it's disrespected is not about what you feel towards me personally. It's about how you didn't respect my time or my use of time.
Yes.
That I had better things to be doing rather than wait for you. Or on the more self-centered side of that perspective, I'm sure you'll understand I had things to do. That's why I was late. It's not, I know that our relationship is strong enough. You'll be okay with me being late. I know you understand I had things to do. And since we both know that getting things done is important, you'll cut me some slack because I was doing something more important, which then is really self-centered because you just said that the thing I was doing was more important than the person I was meeting with. And so the friction I think we can run into is when we say things about time, we can, if we're not really careful, we assume other people have the same perspective. So like from a task perspective, when I say, for example, that a meeting starts at 9:00, what I mean by that is that we are in our seats ready to start at 9:00. And at 9:01, I can feel myself starting to get irritated.
Yes.
How does that meeting starts at 9:00 sound to you instinctively? If you take away everything you've learned over the last 20 years about working with people and how different people see things and go back to more of an instinctive, here's my natural view of things, what does 9:00 meeting starts at 9 mean to you?
So from a people perspective, at least my perspective is we will start getting ready 9:01, 9:02. Hey, as long as we're starting to move forward and getting things rolling, it's all good. It is all good.
9:02, I'm already annoyed. So, and I think it's important to point out that we're looking back in time to our natural perspectives, not the things we've learned in the meantime over the last 20, 30 years.
Yes.
Because you can learn and grow and build greater appreciation for how people see things and start to learn. Like I know for a fact that Carl now understands Guy feels a little pressure in his head if we're not starting when we said we're going to start.
Yes.
And because the relationship is strong, well, let's try to honor that.
Yes.
And on the flip side of that, on my side, I also understand, hey, Carl's a relational kind of guy. If he's a little late, he doesn't mean to be disrespectful.
Right.
He was in another conversation with a person and he was having a hard time ending it or wrapping it up.
Yes.
And so it opens me up to be more flexible and gracious in interpreting time and trying to see it more from Carl's perspective.
Well, and I'll say this, Guy, one of the things that you've helped me to discover and understand in our relationship and in time is the sense of mutual understanding. And so that's hopefully what I know we're going to have other sessions after.
Yeah, we'll talk more about it later. Yeah.
That's really where we want to get people is that back of mutual understanding.
Mutual understanding is a key. And if we think about it, I mean, we're running up on what probably, and honoring our listeners' time. I mean, we promised to be only about 10 or 12 minutes. So I'll try to wrap this up and we'll come back and have some more conversations. I think the thing we want to leave it with is an awareness that different people have different natural views of time.
Yes.
And in the concept of talking like a leader, you want to start with the awareness that not everybody has the same view of what a non-specific phrase like on time means. It means different things to different people. On time to me means we're starting at the time we said we're going to start. On time to Carl means we're in the room getting ready to start in the next few minutes.
Yes.
Well, those are not worlds apart different. They're enough different that they can cause frustration and stress for people.
Yes.
So
And friction.
friction. And so in the context of talking like a leader, one of the tips is to learn how to be more specific and clear. So you head off the unintended misinterpretations. So if you mean to start a meeting at 9:00, talking like a leader would mean saying something like, the meeting will start at 9:00. And what I mean by that is we're all in our seats ready to begin. So you take away misinterpretation. You take, or you at least minimize the risk of misinterpretation. You maybe can't eliminate it. You start to learn how different people hear things so that you can anticipate and plan for where the misinterpretations happen. And then you can speak more specifically to those to hopefully head them off. So the lesson for this week in our Talk Like a Leader episode is to recognize the differences in how different people hear or think about time or feel towards time. Build some grace and understanding into how you view other people and their response. And learn to be very specific when you talk about time to head off the misinterpretations. If you will build grace and understanding and mutual understanding with you and your team so that everybody at least is aware of how different people think about time or feel towards time. And if you'll develop specificity in your communication about time, you can talk like a leader. This has been the Talk Like a Leader podcast. You can listen to this show every week wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Guy Harris, and thanks for listening.